Well, hello and welcome to the Mindset Mentor and Sauga 960 AM. I'm Tania Kolar, and today we are discussing intuitive diagnostic teaching and developing your own intuition. When you can start to tap into your intuition, it really is like having a superpower. It can really help guide you into next steps to take, and just what feels good and what feels right. So we're going to delve into that conversation. And of course, the Mindset Mentor is all about helping you cultivate a life you love because you deserve it. And of course, when it comes to intuition, we want to have a flexible mindset, versus having a fixed mindset. We want to be able to, expand our knowledge, to expand our awareness. And in this show, we are going to help expand your mindset so that you can now become a better version of yourself. And I believe that intuition, certainly helps us do that. So today I'm very happy and excited to invite my good friend, Micahel Philpott, onto the show. Such a pleasure to have you here, Mike. Mike is a Reikii Master. He is a teacher. He is a medium and also host of a brand new podcast that will be launching in December, the Metaphysical Mentor, which is pretty cool. And I think that, all of your experience, really ties in beautifully for exactly what you're doing and how you're helping to teach people to really start to understand what sort of is the cause of some of the illnesses for people. So such a pleasure to have you on the
Well,
show.
thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I want to just give you a little shout out. Thanks so much for helping me on my podcast. It was great coaching, get me on that. So it seems a little similar in name. I wonder why, because you helped me out with that. So I appreciate that. But yeah, this is a new
So,
project. It's
mhm.
kind of like an accumulation of all my training and everything I've done for the last almost 18 plus years, my own personal experiences too as well. And I absolutely love teaching, especially working with healthcare practitioners, because especially alternative ones like traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, naturopathic doctors, things like that. They kind of get it. They're already kind of working in that field of intuitive diagnostic, and they're kind of using a little bit of their intuition. I'm just giving them an extra tool in the toolbox. I mean, eventually I would like to see this go globally into the allopathic medicine. That would be the ultimate dream, to get doctors in there and to really help them. And again, it's just an extra tool. That's something that they can tap into. Now, everybody has this ability to tap into their intuition. It's just like anybody can learn a skill. So it is just like a skill. It takes practice. And it's just figuring out what your strengths are. It's just like trying to figure out your life purpose. You know, figure out what are you good at. And that's what I do, is kind of help them how they figure it out, help them build a template for their particular practice, what they're looking for. And I go from there. Yeah.
Well, I love that, and it sounds like quite a journey, but life is that exactly that. It is a journey, and so having the knowledge and having somebody to help to guide you along that path, I think is ideal. You talked about the desire to have what you're doing in terms of the teaching brought into the allopathic world of medicine, and that's interesting because there's real hard science based medicinal practices when it comes to that world. And so there's not a heck of a lot of room for intuition, which I feel is such a disservice, because I think that we can all benefit from having a greater understanding. And that looks like so many different things in many different situations, but I think at the end, to be able to merge those two worlds would be so beneficial.
Oh, 100%. I so believe that. I mean, it would make things so much easier and quicker, because they already have the diagnostic tools available to them. It just usually what happens is it takes time. So, and that's one of the things too. So if you walked into your doctor's office and he had an impression already what was happening with you, it wouldn't be like 3 weeks, 4 weeks to have, something happen within your diagnostic. So let's say, for example, so if you walked into a doctor's office and your doctor kind of knew in an impression what was happening, a prime example, I know myself, I've been misdiagnosed twice for the same disease. I could have had,
Yeah.
it could have been fatal.
Hmm.
I suffered from a bout of what they call Guillain-Barré syndrome. So it's a neuromuscular disease that's it's very similar to MS. So the first time I went in, so a little back note on that. So I was kind of in and out of the hospital probably about 3 months prior to that, just for various illness and sicknesses and stuff like that. So when the time came and I went into the hospital, I went to emerge like most people do, and went to the emerge doctor, and he looked over me and he just kind of hummed and hawed, and I mean, by then I had numbness and tingling in both hands and feet, so I couldn't feel my fingers and my toes
Oh
at that
dear.
time.
Hmm.
And my face was actually relaxed, so it looked like I had a stroke. So like it started paralyzing. But he checked my eyes, and my eyes were working underneath, so he didn't think it was a stroke. He says, "Oh, maybe you just got a flu. Why don't you just go home? If it gets worse, come back tomorrow."
Oh, so we hear stories like this all the time where people go
Yeah.
in, and they are certainly in need of medical attention and they are sent home. And I think no disservice to the professionals out there, because it's tough, I'm sure, to diagnose all these illnesses that are out there.
Oh yeah.
But it's so disheartening when you hear that that someone's sent home and then they're left to sort of fend for themselves, right?
Yeah. So, just to make a close note. So, yeah, it progressively got really worse because what it does, it works from the peripheral. So, you start getting paralyzed from your limbs, and then it works inwards and towards your lungs. So, you basically go into respiratory shock and respiratory failure, I should say, and you stop breathing. So, yeah, so I end up going home and actually driving, which I don't know how I did, but I ended up going to my family physician at the time, and he just said, "No, you just jump in the ambulance," and sent me back into London to do that. So they finally diagnosed what it was and so like that. But I had it again about 8 years later, and I knew what the symptoms were and the signs because I've already had it.
Hmm.
And I was in a different city, and I was like, "Hey, this is what's going on. This is what I need to do." And of course, there is that kind of ego barrier that you have to deal with physicians. It's like, okay, you're not a doctor, so don't tell me what to do. But
Hmm.
I knew it was going on. So same thing again. They sent me home, but this time it was progressively worse, and my symptoms were worse. So yeah, I basically didn't sleep. Like I made sure I stayed up and did other things. But that's just one incident. So that's when I talk to like a lot of people. It's like, what are the signs and symptoms that we can figure out quickly and efficiently? So what it is they have their diagnostic tools available to them, and what we do and what I do is just using your intuition, using their gut feelings and their whatever senses that they have, and then they have their diagnostic tools to back them up. So let's say, for example, they go, yeah, I think there's something wrong with their blood. Well, then they'll know that they got to do some blood work. But then it can get specifically, let's just say, for example, that you walked in for some particular reason and you're having a rash. And this is kind of like a little case study. I just, it's a possibility. And again, this is a fake case study. It's not a real
Yep.
case study, but it just gives you an example. Person, you walk into a doctor's office and you've been having this rash for 4 or 5 days, and it's not getting better, and it's kind of sporadic all over your body. Your doctor looks at you, he checks you out, and goes, he asks you the typical questions. Okay, so what are you eating? Are you eating anything different? Are you washing your clothes? Anything different? New soaps, new perfumes, new this, new that. And he does his checklist. They do their due diligence, right?
Hmm.
He doesn't have any suspicions. He checks your heart rate, blood pressure. Everything kind of seems normal. Nothing, doesn't, no alarm bells, but you still have this rash. So what typically happens is, not all cases, but again, this is again a fictitious idea. So if somebody's listening out there going, "Well, I wouldn't do that," it's just
Hmm.
an idea. What happens? So you go back home. He gives you some cream, gives you a prescription for some cream. If it gets worse, come back and see me. Again, 3 weeks later, you come back, it's worse, it's a little more sporadic, you're having a little bit of other problems, you're a little more fatigued, some irritability, your hair, maybe losing your hair, stuff like that. He goes, "Oh, okay, well, maybe we'll do some blood work." You get some blood work done. Then you get some blood work done, and then he's checking it, and the ranges are not so bad. I mean, they're not elevated to the extreme where he's like, "Okay, that's a red flag, I got to figure it out." So again, he does his checklist, he does his due diligence. He goes, "Okay, maybe we'll send you to a specialist." And then what happens then? So from the time you went into the doctor and time you get to a specialist, could be 3 months, 6 months, maybe a half year, and you're still dealing with this problem. So again, let me just stipulate this is something fictitious. So let's say you get fed up with it. Well, let me go see somebody else because I'm not getting better. You go see somebody else, and this particular doctor or it could be a naturopath or doctor or something like that. You know, he's really into this intuition. Like he's using his intuition or her intuition to kind of tap into to figure out what's out. So they do the case history like most people, but he's got this impression. He keeps seeing this item. He keeps seeing fish. He's like, what's going on with fish? And he keeps seeing this image of fish. And then maybe he's getting, something in his stomach, and he's like, fish. And then he just happily asks the person, so, are you been eating lots of fish? And she goes, yeah, I've been eating lots of fish. I go to sushi all the time. I eat tuna all the time. I love sashimi. I eat it like probably 5 times a day. So then his brain goes off and goes, what is the correlation between eating tuna and all these other symptoms? And then he figures out, well, maybe it's a toxicity to heavy metals. Maybe she's got some mercury poisoning, some low-level mercury poisoning that you don't really check for, right? You're just looking for white blood cell, red blood cell counts. You're checking creatinine levels. You're doing things, but you're not looking at heavy metals and toxicity. He does a check, right away. Because he confirms it. He goes, his intuition clicks in. He thinks about it. He goes, yep, okay, let's check that out. So now he's got confirmation from her that she's eating this fish. He knows that that's the fish that he's getting. So what he does, he orders a blood work specifically for that, figures it out, tell her to stop eating sushi for the week. Within a couple of days, her symptoms start going up. He gets in a procedure to help with her heavy metal detox. Problem solved.
Wow. So definitely knowing that you're on the right path in that case. Now, I mean, that sounds great. I mean, I would love to go and see a practitioner who had that intuitive capability to look within and say, hey, listen, let's try this and let's see, where that's at. So how accurate and realistic is that for, someone to see a practitioner that has that ability? And can that ability be developed by anyone? Or do you have to have like a special gift to be born with that intuitive nature?
No. Anybody can learn to do this. The reason why I'm just doing with dealing, especially with health practitioners, is because a lot of the readings I do are a lot of health based, and it's very difficult to get people to make changes in their life and their health and stuff like this. And a lot of the signs and symptoms and stuff I've seen, and through my readings and also through my practice and Reiki practice, a lot of it's mental, emotional stuff. And a lot of people don't want to go and heal those sort of things. And a lot of times those are the underlying principles or causes to a lot of disease. And it's well known, it's well documented, but like anybody can learn to do this. We learn to do this all the time. Like, you always hear that old saying, it's like women's intuitions, or, you heard women always know, like that. Because they just tend to feel, again, it's more of a feeling round, but it's also, there's what we call the clairs. These are what they call the extrasensory perceptions. So you have your clairvoyancy, which is, I could see, that's how I see things. And to understand if you're a clairvoyant is also, you figure out how you speak. So if I say to you, see what I mean? You see what I'm saying? I'm a visual learner.
Yep.
So another way to know if you're an empath or what we call a clairsentient is that you feel it. You either feel the emotion or you feel that sensation. Is like, if you speak like, do you feel what I'm saying? I feel this way. Do you feel what I'm saying? Those sort of clues will give you an idea of what your strengths are. And that's kind of what I do, is kind of figure out strengths. But everybody has it's either clairvoyancy, clairsentiency, like you sense it, you can hear things too as well. Claircognizance is another one. Like you just know something, you just know it. You don't know how you know it. And that's the idea behind it. There's no reasonable explanation of why you know this, what you know. It's just because it's coming in from the infinite field that you're attached to. Your body's producing this electromagnetic frequency, it is energy that you're producing that has all this information that's basically coming out from your body. So your mental, emotional body, your physical body, all this stuff is radiating it out from your subconscious mind. It's basically producing. So it's like you're like Wi-Fi. So you're walking around Wi-Fi and we can tune into it. And, this is not something new. Like this has been around for millennials, centuries. This is how we used to communicate. Like, the idea with telepathy that you could just know what's going on. And telepathy is not a new thing. It's, they developed it with, they studied with twins. Twin is telepathy. Telepathy actually radiates from the heart. You may think it's the mind, but it's actually the heart connection that really deals with telepathy in that way. So there's a connection. You just know. Or, the idea is like, we've all had this coincidence. You've been thinking about somebody and they call you. It's like, how did you call me? It's just they're tapping into that energy field, right? We're all these energy fields, these little energy beings, and we just tapping into it. So anybody can learn to do it. It's also a great way because then it kind of gets around the BS. because you can you get an extra sense of what's going on. Like, you can feel what's going on. Like, a lot of people are not really keen on their emotions. They want to hide stuff, but it's a really great way of another way of communicating, but it's a true communication.
Yeah, well, that hiding, and not wanting to sort of see what's there, is part of the blocks and the patterns and the habitual pattern, through past learning that we have developed. And so sometimes it's a matter of now starting to unravel and undo that conditioned programming so that we can develop and tap into that innate being and that pure intuition, where that guidance is there. And that's what I talk about, with intuition being like a superpower, right? So you have that knowledge, it's there, it's clear, it feels right. And yes, we are energy beings and energy centers, essentially, always emitting, absorbing energy at all times. So, it's an exchange, with people. And just to go back to the example that you gave earlier, Mike, about like this, well, is a fictitious example, but, certainly highlighting the point of, the physical issues. And in the case you talked about someone having a rash and perhaps could be linked to, diet, food, mercury poisoning through the fish or what have you, right? If that intuitive sense came in. But from the emotional sense, let's talk a little bit about that, because in that same example, because as you were talking, I thought, oh, here I kind of immediately was thinking, oh, well, it's probably who's bothering you, right? So you have a rash, that's irritating, and I do feel that many of our illnesses that we have certainly linked to the emotion aspect of what's going on in our lives. And I would think that manifests itself quite clearly in issues like that, like a rash or
100%.
pain. Yeah.
100%. Like, you're so nailed on the head, like a lot of it. And that's a lot of my own experiences. What I had in my clinical practice, I've seen a lot of that. And it was interesting enough, because I was practicing Reiki, I was in a busy health clinic, and the chiropractors and acupuncturists there, they would basically send me all the hard cases. They would say, I can't fix this person, you fix them. And I was like, I can't, what are you doing sending to me? Like, I'm just a Reiki guy. Like, come on, I just want to get people relaxed. But so much is emotional, mental. Like, the mind is the builder. Like, really, the mind is the builder, and then the body is the results. Like, there was that whole idea of the issue is in the tissues. And a lot of that just comes from our thinking. Like, our thinking causes us to have these emotions, and again, those emotions produce those chemicals, and those chemicals signal the body to do this, and it's that repetitive information that just keeps that feedback loop all the time, that negative thinking. So yeah, I'll give you an example. It was really interesting. So when I was in the clinic, a lot of the doctors, they accepted me, but they kind of thought I was a little woo-woo out there. So again, this was years ago. This is, probably 18 plus years ago. So people knew about Reiki and stuff like that. It didn't really help that the people came out of my practice. When they came out, they thought they'd be relaxed. They're all bawling and crying because they had such a release of emotion, right? Yes. So I was just helping them release the emotion. So we had this young lady. She came in. She was seeing one of the chiropractors, and he was also an acupuncturist, a Chinese medicine acupuncturist. So he was having problems with this one of his patients, and he says, "Mike, can you really help me out with this?" I said, "You got a different perspective on this." I said, okay. So he says, is she okay with me coming in? Because I'm not a doctor, right? So that's one of the things I always got to make clear. I'm not a doctor, but it just is what the intuition allows me to kind of pick up on these issues. So she had having some sciatic problems, and she just given birth to a baby. I think maybe, again, I don't know exactly how many months it was, but she had a newborn baby, and she's having these sciatic problems, and it was switching from the left and right side. And in my perspective, in the energy world, we have the male side and feminine side on the body, left and right sides. Okay. So the sciatic was bouncing back and forth. So again, the sciatica is basically in the first center, which deals with survival issues. And the survival issues there. So I was looking at that, and I was seeing it. And actually, at the time, I actually could see the meridians that were being blocked. But then I saw the impressions and the emotions I felt. So one of my stronger suits is I am an empath. I feel the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Not the funnest in the world because you feel everybody's pain. Like it sucks, but I've learned to deal with it. No big deal.
Yeah, that sounds heavy. That's
Yeah, it is
yeah.
heavy. It is
Mm-hmm.
heavy. It's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
But during this session, I just had this impression. I was like, um, so I have to ask you, so what's happening with your money situation? And she goes, how do you know I have money situation? And I said, well, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm picking up. And I said, can I ask you a whole bunch of other questions? So I said, yeah. So are you and your husband fighting? And she goes, how do you know that? I said, well, I can see your heart is closed off. And I said, your heart is closed off, and that's the energy of love. And what that whole center was closed off was the emotion. So, and what's been happening is that the husband, the male and female energies have been battling back and forth in survival. And her heart, what she wanted to be was a stay-home mom. But her husband wanted her to go back to work because they only had the one single income. So they're battling back. So every time that she would have this idea to have to go back to work, the right side would flare up. But when she was struggling to be the mom on the one side, the other side would flare up. So she was battling the both sides. And also too, her heart was so closed off, like she was having spasms in her mid back. So again, sciatica, spasm in the back. So he was just treating the pain. But as soon as I mentioned that, I started talking to her through that, and I was recognizing the pain, she just started bawling, like just literally bawling. So she was holding on to that emotional and mental energy that she was actually having. And it was just so liberating, because once you have that liberation, because it's stuck energy, it is stuck energy. Once you have that liberation of energy from that mental and emotional, her body just released. It was like, he said to me, that was the freakiest thing. He said the needle actually pushed up and out from her heart chakra area. So it was basically they called it pericardium area. PC was the Chinese point. I think that's what it was. But even on her sciatica too, as well, when you do acupuncture, they always look for, it kind of looks like a swelling because it's releasing the chi. It's releasing, and he says, I've never seen so much chi released from that particular area. And that's what it was. So it wasn't really that she had a physical problem as far as a mechanical problem with her back. It was just there's so much emotion and mental strain, which causes that, right? So again, it's how we think. So that kind of war that she has to go home, and is that battle between being a stay-home mom, because that's what she loved. Like when she talked about that, like literally it brought me to tears, because there was just so much love that she had. Like, and again, she was battling with her husband because she wanted to stay home. Like that's her whole life was be home. And he was like, no, you got to go back to work. We need two incomes. I can't do all this stuff. And it's that battle. And you could see that in her energy field. And that's what we do every day. Like, all these mental things that happen.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. And, the body certainly holds on to all the emotion, and trauma, past trauma as well. So it's really important to, find ways to release that so that you can be that better expression and a healthier expression of yourself, right? And I think the body is a really good, vehicle for letting us know when it needs extra help, when it needs that TLC. So those are like little, warning signals. I think the body's telling us, like, let's pay attention to what's going on here, and then try to link the emotional aspect to the physical. So we're going to continue the conversation with Micahel Philpott here on the Mindset Mentor and Sauga 960 AM. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar, and today my dear friend Micahel Philpott joining me. Micahel is a teacher. He teaches intuitive diagnostic practices, which is really cool. Tapping into that intuitive nature. We'll talk a little bit more in depth of what that is, and we're gonna share. Mike is gonna share some great examples. In his journey through that and through teaching practitioners, but also, Mike is a medium and a Reikii Master. And I think those practices all marry so beautifully together in what you do, and helping people to really understand, how to recognize the intuitive nudges that we have. And it's so interesting because, we all know when something feels right. You get that gut feeling, and we actually have neurotransmitters, in the gut. And so that's really helping us to tap into that, but we have to listen to it. And oftentimes through life and through stress, we ignore it, or we just sometimes don't want to know, right? We actively
Yes.
choose to not listen to that intuition. Have you done that, Mike?
Oh yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wish I could be as psychic as enough for myself. It's like I always like
Mm.
I'm the worst for that. It's like they always say that. The doctors usually have the ones that have the worst health. Psychics are the one that can't figure their own shit out. You know what I mean,
Mm.
or their own stuff out. Sorry, I didn't mean to
The
swear on.
yeah, it's all good. It's all good. And the cobbler has no shoes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've struggled with that myself as my intuition, and that's just again, it's just deals with just core issues like trust. Like it's a lot of the things too. It's just trusting what it is, right? And that's one of the big things. It's just trusting the information they get, and also choose acting on it too as well. And it's kind of like figuring it out. You got to trust a little bit. So if you got this impression of something and you don't act on it, then you don't know. So you got to, it's like being a little bit experiment. You got to kind of trust it. So it's like, let's say, for example, I get this question a lot, and I really hate this question. I usually don't answer it, but, so let's say you get into a relationship. So, can you tell me about my boyfriend or my girlfriend? And, is this a good choice for me? And it's like, okay, like those questions I 100% avoid. And that's not my style, what I do. But again, it's usually your intuition. And one of the examples I had, I kind of led this young girl. She had that similar situation where she kept making the wrong choices. And it was based on repetitive patterns of poor choices she had a bad picker. She picked the wrong guys. I always had that. And the reason she had those poor pickers is because, her upbringing was not that positive. So she's based it on, she's looking through the lens of the wounded 8-year-old, right? So she keeps picking these. Sorry.
Is it kind of like, when you subconsciously model that bad relationship, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what it was. So when something shows up that's new, it doesn't feel right because it's not the normal. It doesn't feel right. Like you meet this nice guy, hell of a nice guy, but it doesn't feel right. And I kind of pointed out to her, I said she had these two guys, one felt right, but was very unhealthy and not a very good person, same patterns of abuse, bad person. But it feels right. It feels good.
Feels familiar, right?
It's familiar, right? So I said, well, what about the other person? He's nice. He's polite. He's got a good family, all these plus. And I said, you're picking from this old person, right? So it's just trusting that, okay, she knew in her heart, but she wanted confirmation. And that's what she knew. There was a place in her, but she just wouldn't want to listen to it. And I just guided her to listen to it and what happens. And then a year later, she married the guy, and she's been happy ever since.
The nice guy. She married
the nice guy. Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's clarify
she didn't
that.
go. Yeah. Thank the Lord on that. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's just
good.
again, it's a lot of it is just trusting what you get, and then it's like what we were talking earlier. It's about action. You got to practice, and it takes a little bit of practice, because once you start developing, it gets stronger. It's just like practicing, riding a bike or playing the piano. It just takes practice. So, part of it is just a little bit of, it's not really hard to do it. You just you have to get quiet. You get into a meditative state and you start asking it questions, and relevant questions. That's the thing too. You got to ask good questions. And then you just kind of see what impressions you get. You may get an image, like if you're a clairvoyancy, you'll get an image. If you're a clairsentience, like you'll feel something, or an empath, you'll feel like a gut feeling, you'll feel something. Or you just may know, like you get a claircognizant, you just know, like, okay, I got the idea, I got this. Now I have to act on it and then see where it takes you. So you have to be the experimenter of your life. You have to be that mad genius that goes in there every day and experiment and just trust what I'm getting. Because when it comes down to it, the fundamental information that we receive is basically coming from source. And that's what it is. So source, God, love, infinite field,
higher self,
all that stuff. And that's always connected to the infinite field of love. So it always comes from a place of love. It's guiding you gently through this crazy thing called human nature. So it does come from a place of that. So it's just that we just don't listen to it. That's all.
Yeah, and I think some of the reasons why, we don't listen to it is through obviously, past experiences and, holding on to those patterns. So I think it becomes important to start to peel the layers back, because there are layers
Yes.
of hurt, of the pain, those raw emotional wounds that are painful to, get past and beyond. Or sometimes you just, because it's familiar, you don't know how to get past and beyond it. But I think it is so important to really try and, do what you can and be active, in your journey, and to say, all right, I have a commitment to myself that I'm going to let this go, or I'm going to learn what's holding me back. And in my own life, I mean, geez, I had a ton of limiting beliefs. Like, I mean, I probably had more than most people, right?
Well,
And
well, we'll share that trophy there. I'll tell you that. I'm still working on it, for Christ's sake. To
yeah,
be honest with you, I'm
well,
like, oh my
I
god.
think I think we all will work on them, through life. It's not like, you work on a bunch and then disappear entirely, but you'll be challenged, right?
Really?
They
I was so
I'm
hoping that's
sorry.
it.
Hate to be the bearer of bad news, but yes, the reality is. But the good thing is that, we now, have a greater understanding when we can get past that. And you know that
Yep.
now, okay, it's only temporary. And I view challenges that arise always as a learning opportunity. So especially when I find myself repeating, or some pattern is repeating, I go, so what's the learning here for me? So this is an opportunity. Even though I'm not loving the moment, I go, what can I learn from this? Because it's an opportunity for me to see something that I haven't seen before, that has gone unrecognized in myself. And this experience is helping to bring it up so that I can now reconcile it. And when you reconcile those issues, challenges, situations, they are so liberating. And
Yeah.
I think
Like,
every day we have those opportunities, right, to
oh my
learn.
God. Yeah. And again, it's really amazing. Once you liberate, again, it comes down to energy. You liberate those energies, and then that energy is now available to you to heal, to do so much magical stuff. But again,
Mm.
gets stuck in the body all the time. So yeah, it's an amazing journey. It's a difficult journey, and I always tell people I never sugarcoat it. Like, say, "Oh yeah, it's so awesome. Oh my God, it's the best thing in the world." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, that's BS. That's,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I keep it real. I try to tell, I mean, these are my own personal experiences too, as well. I mean, I've had a ton of them. Just, we've shared our stories back and forth, over
Mm-hmm,
a glass of
mm-hmm,
wine or two. And,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it really is. And, one of the things, like, I know you talk about too, as well, is, having a better mindset. And I know we've talked about your courses and things like that, and how you've helped people to get in a better mindset too. And it's always people like ourselves that kind of been through the ringer of sorts, to kind of really know, like, we've kind of lived it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about this stuff, we lived it, and we're still living it. And it really gives us a good insight to what's happening. And for everybody's listening out there, you may be in a bad spot, but you're not alone on this. There's always help. You got to just kind of dig deep into the side. And that's one of the things that I found out about myself through this journey, is that I have tremendous amount of perseverance. And
Yes,
that's the one
yes.
thing I found out, probably one of my strongest beliefs and strongest ideals, philosophies, and just character driven, is just perseverance. And I know a lot of people out there have that perseverance. You just got to find it. You got to tap into that. And especially nowadays, like, there's so many people that are suffering, this crazy COVID thing. And it's like, this,
Mm-hmm.
my direction in life, where am I going? What am I doing? All this stuff. And you know what?
Fear. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a ton of fear, and all that crazy media is just making it worse. And, if I can just say one thing, it just, there's a part of you that's connected to the infinite source, that if you just spend some time looking for it, it will find you.
Mm.
And that's what I do on a daily basis. That's what I kind of preach, that philosophy to my students, whether it's just somebody who's next door, or one of my professionals, health practitioners, is just take time from a daily practice to go within, and to look for that, because it's in within. It's always within. It's never out. It's always within. And when you find that and you build on that, you just want more of it. That's the joy. That's the happiness, and you get the release from that. So that's your quiet time to go within. So Yeah, that's one of the things I love to teach people about. Just take that time, and I know you're stronger than you think. That's the thing too, as well. It's that I always say that you're always stronger than you think. So whatever's happened to you, and only another thing too is reach out. If you got problems and things are not well, reach out to as well. You'd be surprised that if you just pick up the phone and call somebody, you'll do wonders for yourself and somebody else, because they may be going through a struggle right now too as well. So.
Yeah, I
Anyways, I
absolutely
just went off
agree.
on a tangent there. I don't know where it's like,
I love it.
all
No, it's
right.
so
I was like,
good. It's
my
good.
philosophy, I just went off the chart there.
No, you were just tapping into your intuition.
Yeah. You know what? I kind of zoned
Yeah,
out
it
there for a
felt
second.
good.
So I
It
was
felt
like,
right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But no, I absolutely agree with you, and it really is so important to reach out if you are certainly feeling the pressures, and it's very therapeutic. And and I was one of those people that I would never talk about my feelings. It's like there's no way I'm not going to share. Like forget about it, right? But I know
Hold
I'm
on,
just
you
yeah, I
now?
know, right? I just share everything. It's like
Well, that book really well shared everything out there, my dear.
that was raw. It was real. It was
Yeah.
raw. And it was hard. Let me tell you, that was not easy. It was not an
I
easy book
so
for me to
commend you on
write.
that. Like you, like that's like that takes you know well, a little oomph. Like, I mean, I commend you. I mean, I struggle with that. I mean, I did get a little raw and real on my podcast too, as well.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm,
I had a guest on here. She started channeling my inner child,
mm-hmm.
and I was like, no. It's like, oh, and it's like, oh, screw it. Let's just do it. So,
Yes.
but
Okay.
yeah.
So let's talk about that because here's the
Oh,
cool
okay.
thing.
What the
Okay.
podcast or my
So
inner child?
both. No, but here,
Okay.
yeah, no, but here's the thing is that, you had that fear, right? And so
Oh,
many
yeah.
people are stuck there because being vulnerable, it's tough, right? But it
Oh,
is,
I do not like that at all. That's the
oh,
one thing.
yeah,
And I think as a
so good.
guys, that's, we struggle with this, and because it is a form of weakness, and
Yeah.
that's what was programmed into us.
Yeah.
And, it's a form of weakness, and
Yeah.
it's a vulnerability. And I know my own personal experience, just from coming from the abuse as a child, like being vulnerable, I hate that feeling. I hated
Mm-hmm.
it, and I hated it, and I hated it. I still hate it to this day. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm more accepting of it, and, understanding that, okay, I'm okay. But yeah, that's that part of that fear was just, it was awful. It was awful.
Yeah.
And to be emotional and talk about feelings, that took me a long time to get over it. It took me a lot of therapy to get over it, and some good
Mm-hmm.
friends like my good friend Tania Kolar. And
Well, thank you, my dear. Yeah,
yeah,
I've
yeah.
always got your back, and that is the power of talking and sharing, because we can have an incredible healing through sharing, and I was exactly like you in the sense that I grew up with the belief that crying was a weakness, so I was never going to cry. You wouldn't see me
Mm,
cry, even though I was crying on the inside. There's no way I would cry. And it took me decades to say, all right, I can actually let it all out. And boy, when I first started to let it all out, I mean, I couldn't stop, right? I think I cried for hours, right? But then you start to become more comfortable with what was completely uncomfortable. And that's such a beautiful progression in your life when you can get to that state. So thank you for being vulnerable here and sharing that in your journey, because I know for you too, that's a tough one.
yeah.
It's been a process. And as a child, going through abuse, like, as you have, children need safety and security, and when that's
Yeah.
stripped
100%.
away, it's really going to shape how you move forward in life, and it's going to become a challenge, right? So
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you were able to share, and now you're helping other people, through your healing, work, through your Reiki, and also the intuitive diagnostic work that you're doing, but also through your podcast. So I commend you on that. Well
Well, thank
done.
you. Well, again, I won't blow too much smoke up your way, but a lot of that had to do with you, giving me the courage to do it too as well, and just being that voice that I can count on to give me, a helping hand and kind of get me into some massive action, to keep going, because
Yes.
that's a lot of your core philosophies, and you
Hmm.
always give me a little kick in the ass when I need it, and I so appreciate that, and I think that's really important, and and I see the passion when you talk about it, and you talk about it to your people and through the radio and your own podcast and the stuff like that. You're doing tremendous work yourself. So a little extra pat on your back there too, a virtual one.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. COVID
Yeah.
pat on the back, right?
COVID pat on the back. Yeah.
But it is, to me, that's, I am very passionate about what I do. I love people, and I love to see people thrive. And I think we need that. We need that support, and so it's so much easier for other people to see, the push that we need, because we can be blind to it. Very clear sometimes for other people, and through language. I mean, that's why for me it's so important. I really listen to people's language. And you had mentioned earlier about the clairs, right? Absolutely. Like, I listen because when you listen, you're going to hear how someone needs to be, or how they resonate with what you're saying, right? Whether they hear it or see it or feel it, right? So it's always important to listen to that language, but you don't have to wait for other people, to really help you, because we have the power to take action. We have that within. We are all these beautiful, innate, extraordinary beings. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting the heck out of your own way. Like, I mean, I was so stuck in my own way for a long time. And that's where I could recognize when you were stuck in your own way. And it's like, now I'm going to give you a little push to get out of there. It's like,
well, that's being polite
here. Well, we are on the radio after all. Yeah.
That was very polite of you. Yes. Yeah. Well,
oh, so funny. So funny. But yeah, I think it's great. And so, this is now, for you, you're doing exactly what you're doing, what you love. I see that passion in you.
I love that teaching. Oh my God.
So, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I love teaching. Like, it's, it's part of it is, just seeing the light bulb go off. And then when they get it, I have this one student that I've been working with, and she's amazing. Like, every time I'm with her, she blows me away. Like, she's just amazing. Her abilities just keep growing, and they're far superior than mine. Like, she could be now the master. Like, her abilities are really good, very dialed in, and she's using that in her practice, and she's very comfortable using it. So now it's very quick to her as far as that. But yeah, I mean, I would, once this COVID things in, and I can get a proper place to start teaching and stuff like that. And I'm really looking forward to it. That's kind of keep me going. And then the podcast too, as well, though. Yeah, which I'll be launching in December. I've had some amazing guests like Tania Kolar and a few other people, and I'm learning so much. That's the thing too, as well, which I loved about it, is I'm learning so much from that. Like, I'm kind of like, my brain is kind of swollen. I get done the podcast and I'm like, oh my God, I've just learned some more stuff, and just amazing guests. And it's a great thing about it. We talk about community. There's so many people out there building a community of all these healers and these practitioners, and that are out there too as well. And it's beautiful, because now we're developing a community. You have a lot of the similar guests. You help me with my guests, and I help you with your guests. And we're and they're sharing their stories, and they're helping people out. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. So it hasn't launched yet. It's called the Metaphysical Mentor Podcast, which will be, I think it's going to be on the platform, Anchor platform, but it'll be launching on Spotify, Apple Play, and then also I'll be doing on YouTube too as well, like our Zoom conversations, like the one we're having right here now. Yes, also available to have a look on my YouTube channel after the radio show here. And so again, thanks for sharing all of that. And I love that, building community. So we're going to continue building community here on Sauga 960 AM. You're listening to the Mindset Mentor, and we'll be back after this break. And we are back here on Sauga 960 AM. I'm Tania Kolar. You're listening to the Mindset Mentor. We're going to continue the conversation with Micahel Philpott, my dear friend joining us today, who is a medium. He's a Reikii Master. He is a teacher, and he's been working with practitioners to, help them develop their intuitive diagnostic capabilities. So we're going to really delve into that a little bit deeper. So, I think we've laid out the foundation well of essentially what that is, but what does that consist of? So if I were, or anyone was to walk in to see, an intuitive diagnostic practitioner,
what is the process, and how do they analyze and then give you this prognosis, so to speak?
Well, a lot of it is based on their practice itself. So each different practice, whether it's a traditional Chinese medicine, naturopath, allopathic, chiropractic, they all have their different ways of doing intakes. It's very similar. Again, it all depends on what's happening too as well. So again, it's very tailored to it's very specific. But again, most general practitioners are going to look at chemically. They're going to try to figure out what's going chemically, what's happening within the body, the blood, things like that. They're going to look at physically, chemically, and mentally. So those are the three pillars, right? So if you get the chemical balance right, the physical usually happens, and then you start thinking better. You start kind of feeling better. But we take it a next step a little bit further. We go into the emotions and the spiritual aspects too as well. So that usually tends to kind of go more towards the traditional Chinese medicine and naturopath. Allopathic can still do the same thing, because a lot of the different things that I will see, and when we're training and we're working with clients, because we actually work with clients when I train, we'll actually do clients and we'll work on these particular areas for them to look at. So a lot of the times too, it is a spiritual disconnect that's causing a lot of problems. So those big questions, why am I here? What am I doing? Where's my life going? So those big, questions that are deeply spiritual can have an effect on you, again, mentally, and then it works on your emotions, and then works back onto your chemical, and then your physical. So we look at all aspects of that. So for the most part, like if you're a trained doctor, it's basically chemistry for sure, right? They know chemically, they figure out the chemical, because that's what they're doing, because they have drug interactions or supplements and things like that. Blood work, so they're looking at creatinine levels, they're looking at RBC, white blood cell count, looking at liver enzymes, things like that. They're looking at the internal chemistry, what's happening within the body, and that will give them a better idea. So they also know physically. So you combine the two. So once you start balancing one, the others kind of fall in place. So again, with allopathic, not necessary all the time, but if you figure out the chemistry, and again, you give a pill, the pill fixes the internal chemistry, which fixes the physical, then you feel better, right? You get this mental state. Oh, I feel better. I feel great. Oh, 100%. So those are some of the parameters. But we always look at, again, the whole aspect. So when I train somebody, it's very easy for them to go chemical, physical. That's a lot of their training. So then we go emotional. So I get them to tap into the emotion. What is the emotion that you're feeling and you're picking up? And sometimes that's usually the hardest part. Some people, they can get it right away. Some people, they just struggle with it. And then what's the mental aspect too as well? What are the mental images and things that you're thinking you're getting to as well? So that is aspect. Is there something going on with the mental? Because then you're just building certain areas, right? As you do an intake form, depending on, you'll do a case history of what's happening with you. Mm-hmm. And traditionally in naturopath, from my understanding, is a little more detailed than an allopathic, and same thing with Chinese medicine. They do a fairly detailed one too as well. So there is a lot of emotion. So it's just figuring that out really quickly. And you basically look at those parameters, and then we just get them to help tap into it. So I push them to go beyond what they normally think, because they get into this pigeonhole. They go, I see this, and this is what I see, and this is what I think it is. But I said, let's expand that. There's always, like anything, there's always an underlying cause to what's happening, right? So that's what I'm trying to get them to look at. What's the underlying cause? Because I look at, in medicine and healing and stuff, are we just body mechanics? Are we just going to put the tires on and let them go? Are we actually getting people to heal themselves? And that's the thing. It's like, so I struggle with that, for my own thing. It's like, here, we'll just give you a pill, send you on your way. But am I getting better? Possibly, yes, but not necessarily. So there's always that underlying symptom or problem that's causing these things that we really don't find. And once we figure that out, they always say that, 95%, maybe the wrong quote on that. Don't quote me on the specifics, but most of it is behind, or it's in the subconscious mind, or it's under the surface, right? We only see a little bit. So like the rash is just an indication of what something else is happening underneath. But if we really knew and understood what was actually happening, and then we could verify it, because that's what we have. We have verification tools. That's the great thing about doctors, because they have the verification to do some blood work. If they knew that, okay, the chemistry is off, they just knew something. Let's say they had an impression like, oh, your insulin, like they just feel sugar. They see a sugar cube, or they see sugar, or they see honey, or see something that gives them that, thought. He's like, sugar. Let me check your insulin levels. Like, have you been eating this? And it's like, yeah, right away. does blood work, looks back and it's like, oh yeah, you're pre-diabetic. Let's change that. So those type of intuitional thoughts. So he knows the chemistry. But if we take a look at it, what's causing them to eat all this sugar?
Right. Whether it's an emotional, issue,
Yeah,
if you have a habit of, self-soothing through sweets. Hmm.
exactly. So then that's mental emotional, right? So, okay, we figured that out. Okay, you're eating way too much sugar, cut out the sugar. But if you don't solve that problem, when you go home and you're feeling like crap, what are you going to do? You're going to hit that sugar. I've been guilty of that too. It's
Hmm.
that's how I used to soothe myself when I was younger. Just a little bit of sugar. So if they knew that, you say, okay, so we got that part, we figured that out. Intuitive mind goes, okay, she's emotionally eating. She just lost her job, or there's some stress or something going on that they pick up, and it's like, hey, we need to get you some help to figure that out. So that's causing the underlying issue. So when she has the emotional and mental support, that's healing that aspect. Then it's a lot easier for her to help the chemical. So then she doesn't have to worry about trying to get on insulin and stuff like that. So there's always this. It's complex, but it's not too complex. But once you start figuring out those layers, it just makes it easier. That's what they do. So again, it's just giving them an extra tool. That's all it is. Is just like,
Hmm.
getting into that too. And I bet you there's a lot of doctors out there that are working that way, but don't want to talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
like they
Yeah.
can't say that, oh, this is how I get my impressions. And I'm
Hmm.
sure that they do. I'm sure it will eventually become mainstream, it's going to be a teaching thing. But I know there's a lot of doctors. I mean, I know there's naturopaths right now that I can name a few offhand that work very intuitively. Like they're like super connected,
I
and
know.
that's how they do
I
their work.
I actually know some as well, that exactly do that. And so,
Yeah.
it's interesting though, I think because we've really come a long way in terms of our acceptance and understanding of, the spiritual world, the connection, the mental
Mhm.
emotional connection to the human body. But certainly there's still a lot of resistance in that, especially in the science-based, fields, where, they like the hard facts, right?
Well,
But now science has started to prove, that there is hard facts to prove that there is an energy, going on around us. And it's that,
mm,
let's say you have a toothache, right? There's an energy vibration that's sent along that toothache. And so, again, it's like really kind of recognizing and understanding what that vibration is and trying to change that energy field.
yeah, like the good thing about with doctors and impact practitioners, they have the medical tools to confirm what they get their impressions of. So, which
Hmm.
is the great thing. So, they have the science. So, if they have the intuitive impression, so they have this psychic ability, they have this ability to tune in and figure out what's going on, then they can back it up. That's the great thing. That's what I love about it. So, if they get that impression, they do the blood work, they get specific blood work, or they have a recommendation of a specific thing. They may think it's a mental thing. Send them to a psychotherapist, send them to, take some EMDR or, a chiropractor or something like that. So they can figure out right away. And then basically they have the tools, like if they need an MRI, like let's say, for example, person is feeling funky and not feeling well, a little dizzy, stuff like that. And then he just has this pressure. Like, so maybe he's got this pain or this pressure in his head, or he's actually sees it in his third eye. Like he sees that impression that there's something stuck or something lodged in the brain. Like it's just something that happens. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to send you for an MRI. And then they check the MRI, bang, he was right on his intuition, or
Yeah.
she is, right on intuition. So, I had a family member, wasn't a family friend, I should say, that, again, it was, she lost her life to cancer. And again, it was just a simple thing that, and again, I'm not blaming the allopathic. Please don't say it's a allopathic
No, of
bashing
course,
system.
and we certainly need
No,
them. Yeah.
no, no. Yeah.
Also in
100%. They're
place.
like, I mean, yeah. I mean, if it
Mhm.
wasn't for them, I'd probably be dead. So,
Mm.
but again, if something that was simply that's misdiagnosed that wasn't thought of, they didn't catch it in time, and that's it. So something like a cancer, if you catch it right away, it's very treatable, it's very preventable. But if you don't catch it, if you don't see what's going on, that there could be a gap where it's like 3 months, 6 months that could have been treated. It could have metastasized, it could get worse, right? It can grow and it gets spread, right? So if you catch it early enough, and again, that's always early prevention, right? So
Well,
just
especially in
something,
cases like that, with, the sooner the better, certainly, right? Um,
yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we are out of time.
Wow,
So I
already.
know, I know. It was such a pleasure having you on the show, Mike, and sharing
Thank
your
you.
wealth of knowledge and, helping us to understand what that intuitive diagnostic process is and what that looks like and how we can, now to become really, more empowered when we do visit, let's say, the allopathic doctor or the naturopathic doctor or what have you, an herbalist and anything in between, right? So I think it's wonderful information. So, how can everyone find you just before we head off?
They can find me on Facebook. Yeah, Micahel Philpott on Facebook. Podcast is going to be the Metaphysical Mentor podcast. It's going to be on YouTube. So look for that in December. It'll be under Micahel Philpott and Metaphysical Mentor. And then Spotify, Apple Play. It's going to be launched on Acre FM. So look forward to that. You can hear lovely people like Tania Kolar and all her friends will be on the podcast too as well. We got some great topics too as well.
Yeah, well, listen, I it was a pleasure to be on the podcast, so I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. And again, thank you so much for being here on the Mindset Mentor. And that is a wrap for today's show, everyone. So remember to work on your mindset. Your mindset is like a muscle that needs to be strengthened and conditioned. So let's start having our mindset work for us rather than against us. We'll see you next Saturday at 11 a.m.